Happy Errol Barrow Day. Today is a day that we celebrate our father of independence and the founder of the Democratic Labour Party. It is a day of great appreciation and joy for all Barbadians. We welcome you to the annual Errol Barrow Memorial Lecture and Award Ceremony, with a twist so that we all stay safe in light of COVID-19. I am your host, Terrian Reed, and I am the president of the Young Democrats, Barbados. Let us start this evening's proceedings with a prayer from Reverend Dale Currency from the Carter's New Testament Church of God in Carter's St. John.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Almighty God, how merciful and righteous you are. We thank you, dear God, for your many blessings that you have given to us. We say thank you. We thank you, dear God, because when we look back at 2020, we are truly grateful for your mercies to us, dear God. And we extend, dear God, our gratitude to you. We lift our hands in the air and say thank you, Father. And despite all, we can look and stand and rejoice in you because you love us, you care for us. And as we gather, dear God, on this day of the 21st of January to celebrate Barrow's legacy, I pray, dear God, that this day will be a day where we would learn and appreciate who we are as a people and our purpose to this society that you have called us to be in, dear God. Bless our guest speaker, Dr. Yearwood, as he speaks to us, as he delivers the message to us, dear God. I pray that your hands will be upon him in Jesus' name. Bless, dear God, our president of the Democratic Labour Party, Errol, as she leads the people, as she leads those who you have placed in her care, dear God. I pray that you will bless her and her family. I pray, that God, that she will be supported, dear God, in the way that would enhance her leadership, dear Father. Guide her as we look to her, dear God, as we give her the support that she needs, Father, in Jesus' name. The road, dear God, is not easy, but with you all things are possible. And in you, dear God, we walk. In you, we strive. In you, dear God, we stand tall, declaring who we are and your mercies and your blessings to us as a people. And as we celebrate today, our Father, we pray, dear God, that you will enlighten our minds and our hearts, and that any ills and any setbacks, dear Heavenly Father, that we will come together as one to celebrate, to work together, to lift up each other, and to move in unity, because you have called us to be a unified people, and as a party, dear God, it's no different. Bless us, Father. Bless this day. Bless the lecture, dear God, and bless your people in Jesus' name. Amen.
I now welcome the president of the Democratic Labour Party, Ms. Verla DePisa, to welcome you. She'll be followed by Ms. Lashana Griffith, who is a writer and the secretary for the Young Democrats, and she will be delivering a spoken word piece.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the executive and general councils of the Democratic Labour Party, I want to welcome you to a revamped but definitely also energized Errol Barrow Memorial Lecture. Every year, we take the time to reflect on what our founding father has offered not only to the party, but to the people of Barbados and the region as well. And in our reflections, we think back on what he has given to us in particular focus this year will be his contribution to education and, of course, to independence, as we discuss nationally how we react to COVID, and also because there is a national conversation on the Republic. What is very clear in listening to his speeches is that he continues to have a relevance in the 21st century. His thinking was so deep and so wide and so vast that even 30 plus years after he has left us, we can still find nuggets of truth to bring us forward and bring us up. We, every single year, rejuvenate ourselves by refreshing our philosophy and our founding father and what he has meant to us. This year will be no different, except that we call on all of you within the hearing of my voice also to resolve to be a part of that nation-building effort, that each one of us has a role to play. It may seem small, but it is definitely to the advantage of all in society. And every single year, without fail, we will take this pause. COVID was an interruption, a slight aberration. But like Buju Banton said, we're buried alive, but still breathing, moving forward, understanding that this is a moment in time when we get to think deeply, just as our founding father did, as to what we want for our country going forward. And so I invite you and I welcome you amongst us today, that you can be a part of this journey forward with the Democratic Labour Party on behalf of the country of Barbados. We have all of us a role to play. We have all of us to resolve that we will be a part of this movement going forward, because this country needs us like it has never needed us before. Our founding father laid our foundation, and we will build the walls of this nation proudly, Barbadians, going forward and recognizing the role that we have to play.
What do you see? Do you like your reflection? Are you in good company? When you stand in front of a mirror, what image do you see? Do you see someone of great value to their nation and their party? When you look into the mirror, what image of Barbados comes to mind? Is it one that reminds you of Barrow's legacy, that we will be friends of all and satellites of none? What kind of mirror image do you have for yourself? Is it one where you remain a penniless politician, but an honest one who has self-worth and dignity? When you look into the mirror, do you like what you see, or is it something you wish to change? What is the mirror image you want to see? Is it similar to Barrow's, that the Democratic Labour Party has an image that the people of Barbados would be able to run their own affairs, to pay for the cost of running their own country, to have an education system which is as good as what can be obtained in any industrialized country anywhere in the world? Or does it differ as you seek to come into the 21st century? What is your mirror image? What is it that you see? Do you like your reflection? Does it make you happy? If you do not like your reflection and it does not make you happy, then what can you do to change it? I think that we in the West Indies should not be afraid to speak our minds. I think we in Barbados must speak out against injustices. I think we must truly look into the mirror and see the Barbados we want for our children and our nation's children, and we must take our two hands and claim it. And the only way to claim it is by looking to yourself in the mirror and making the changes you want to see. What is your mirror image? Do you like what you see? Does it make you happy? I thank you.
Protocol having been established, good evening to all of you, and rich in foresight that it can still be applied today across the length and the breadth of Barbados. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, just to say a few words on our speaker, let me assure you, I am here standing with shackles awaiting me if I say anything which may leave him imprisoned. Ronnie and I, we go way back, way back. We are both former students of the Alexandra Secondary School. Ronnie having a year or two on me. I can actually still see Ronnie today, walking along the corridors in his long tie, down by his belt buckle, and his prefect badge on his shirt. Ronnie always had the brains at school to be at the top of his class. I knew he would become a Chevening Scholar, a National Development Scholar, a Research Overseas Scholar, and a qualified lawyer. If there's one person at school who I always felt would be that person, it was always Ronnie. I will admit, not me. While we both share a love for politics, I had never, ever been given the title of Prime Minister. But yes, believe it or not, he was once a sitting Prime Minister. For Ronnie is the former Prime Minister of the Barbados Youth Parliament. Currently, he is a lecturer at the University of West Indies, Cave Hill. But academics aside, I've been told he is a good cook. Now, I cannot verify this, for I have declined a few invitations to come over for drinks and food. But I assure you this, the next invitation I'm given, I will verify just how good his culinary skills are. Ronnie is a family man. He understands the importance of family, and he is devoted to his wife, Dr. Lucy Weeder, who is expecting their first bundle of joy any minute now. Let me say this in front of all of you, to my good friend, Dr. Ronnie, and to his wife, Dr. Lucy. This little bundle of joy, feel free to name him or her Corey or Corrine. I'll accept that. Please place your hands together at home, wherever you are, as I welcome tonight to deliver the lecture at the Errol Barrow Memorial Lecture, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood.
Chairman of the Lecture Organizing Committee, President, Executive and General Counsel of the Democratic Labour Party, fellow Barbadians at home and diaspora, greetings on this Errol Barrow Day. Corey, thank you for an all too generous introduction. I believe it was Mark Twain who once said that he could live for 2 months on a good compliment. Given your introduction, Corey, I may just be assured a long life. Though I will say, prayers, faint or high, can often be comfort for a fool. I want to thank the organizing committee for this lecture and the Democratic Labour Party for inviting me this evening, to return to George Street, having many years ago delivered the lunchtime lecture to launch my book then on international economic law. It was to the DLP's credit back then that I could walk into George Street and provide a blistering critique of its policies. I recall the story made the back page of the Nation newspaper. You can only imagine my surprise to have been invited back to speak at George Street. And not just back, but to deliver the prestigious memorial lecture bearing the name of your founder and the father of independence, Errol Barrow. I should probably at this time single out the chairman of the organizing committee for tonight's event for their courage. By the end of the night, I hope to meet the challenge that has been put before me, or it will be a song for us both. Either way, we are both here for our country, and those of us who can use their voices should never stand shy of critics. In that spirit, let us be called to have grace under fire. As a member of the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill, it is only fitting for me to start this Errol Barrow Memorial Lecture by recalling Barrow's principles, key principles in regard to the University of the West Indies, given that he was instrumental in setting up the University of the West Indies at Cave Hill. Barrow tasked the university with public engagement at the national and the regional level. He stated, "The university must move from the confines of the campus and more into the heart of the communities that constitute our region." Barrow not only tasked the university with public engagement, but given Barrow's insightfulness, he provided the university with the tools to carry out that important role of public engagement. In what amounts to a robust defense of academic freedom, Barrow stated, "The university must never be restricted, impeded, or harassed from fulfilling its intellectual function of introducing its students critically and honestly to the great body of ideas which constitute the storehouse of human knowledge." And he further stated that any government that he was part of would never circumscribe the university by demanding that the members of its staff should subscribe to some form of conventional wisdom or be uncritical of the government itself. Therefore, I see this lecture as part of my solemn duty that the university was tasked with by none other than the person instrumental in giving life to the university. I am therefore honored to have been asked and been invited to deliver this lecture, as has been done by so many of my UB colleagues before me. It is well known that Barrow left the Barbados Labour Party and formed the Democratic Labour Party in the 1950s. What we tend to forget about this story is that Barrow was doing this in the shadow of the incomparable titan that was the grand old man, Grantley Adams, of the Barbados Labour Party. Barrow, having assessed that the Barbados Labour Party was not moving at the pace required to meet the challenges that Barbados faced at that time, made a decision and acted, importantly, to form this new party, the Democratic Labour Party. He was brazen and he was unbowed. This is a fine example, if there's any that you ever need, of living by your principles. Today, it is perhaps easy to forget what a Herculean task Barrow faced in trying to form a new party and to forge an independent nation out of a plantation society not far removed historically and in real terms and in real time from slavery. As he said on the verge of independence in 1966, and it's still a task that we need to engage with today, the soul of this community has to be laid bare, and there is no better time to do that than when we are preparing for independence, so that we know what we are, who we are, and where we are going. So what was Barrow's vision? I think it was best summed up by Barrow himself in 1986. "I tell you," he said, "what kind of mirror image I have of you, or what the Democratic Labour Party has of you. The Democratic Labour Party has an image that the people of Barbados will be able to run their own affairs, pay for the cost of running our own country, to have an education system which is as good as any can be obtained in any industrialized country anywhere in the world. I would add to this that Barrow's vision for Barbados was to be underwritten by the delivery of social justice for all Barbadians. As he stated, social justice cannot be achieved in a society where there's inequality and discrimination, either at the workplace or outside of it. Social justice cannot exist with hunger and unemployment. Barrow's contribution to the development of Barbados, his legacy, if you prefer that word, can be situated in the stages of development of Barbados. In broad strokes, these stages of development can be categorized as follows. Grantley Adams, self-government and the provisions of welfare in the 1950s. Barrow, full independence and free education in the 1960s to create the black middle class, economic diversification from sugar to tourism, and the development of light manufacturing. Tom Adams, infrastructural modernization and along an expansion in the tourism sector that Barrow initiated. Adams would also add the international business sector. Arthur, economic pragmatism, and a quest at poverty reduction, which actually harks back to Barrow's own economic pragmatism, which still defines the current stage of Barbados' development. At each stage, whether a Barbados Labour Party or a Democratic Labour Party government, there has been an emphasis on maintaining the social goods of universal access to health and education and the provision of basic welfare. It can serve willful political interests to promote a counter-narrative, but generally, the political and socio-economic development of Barbados appears essentially as some form of continuous process of development. The Best of Santos Public Health Laboratory being the most recent example, having been conceptualized by one government, built by one government, and employed to its maximum capacity during the COVID pandemic by another government. What we therefore realize is that new visions or ideas for Barbados are part of the continuous or the stages of development of Barbados, or in more formal terms, the historical pattern of socio-economic development and political growth of Barbados. Despite the fire of electoral politics, often more heat than light, Barbados has never been a country for revolution as such, but more of quiet change, sometimes frustratingly so. Historian Gordon Lewis observed in 1968, and still probably out today, in many ways, that it required a Fidel Ista hurricane to change Barbados overnight. It remains, despite the Democratic Labour Party's winds of change, a mixture of class privilege, genteel respectability, and institutional conservatism with a new element of intruding American wealth. This is in the 60s. Lewis was also to describe the approach to public engagement and discussions by the Barbadian middle class as retreating to the secrecy of home life for their public expressions are still hesitant, constituting a series of angry mutterings behind closed doors. This, he said, was the well-known Barbadian middle-class tactic of withdrawal. Perhaps social media allows for this tactic in our more modern context through WhatsApp chats or private social media groups. I am no social historian, so I will leave further observations to my colleagues at the University of the West Indies. What I can say is that even if we assess change as a continuation or the stages of development, any vision for Barbados does not need to be trapped by the legacy of any person or any political party, because over time, the challenges and the solutions are simply not the same. The late Errol, former editor of the Nation newspaper, perhaps sets out the best approach for engaging in political legacy, and in particular, Barrow's legacy. Hoyt was speaking to the Democratic Labour Party, but the approach can now be broadened to Barbados and how we should and can approach Barrow or any political legacy. White stated, the Democratic Labour Party, and I add, Barbados, should not hang on to Barrow's coattails indefinitely, for as a political party and a country gets older, it must rely less on its past for future success and adopt an appropriate strategy for the times we live in today, as Barrow did for his times. In today's context, therefore, Barrow can be mood music, but not necessarily the main tune or song. What I will do now is briefly assess the challenges Barbados face as a country, and as importantly, I will try to set out a few suggestions on how Barbados can address those challenges as part of a vision towards the continuing development of Barbados. We may ask ourselves, as did former Prime Minister Sandiford, how did we get here? Suffice to say, we all know the current state of the country. More importantly at this time, however, is how we develop from here. The Caribbean Development Bank estimated that slightly above a third of all Barbadians are multidimensionally deprived. Barbados does not only have issues with inequality as to wealth, but also in our education system. For example, research shows that the majority of prison inmates come from 8 of the lowest ranked secondary schools in Barbados. These children are from the same multidimensionally deprived households, have not only been failed by the educational system, but by the legal system that incarcerates them, essentially for the households that they were born into. On income concentration, for example, in tourism, the main industry, 47% of all rooms available in traditional hotels are owned by 8 people. This means that our key economic driver in our society is controlled by a small group of people who may be able to extract concessions and promote self-interest. It was also estimated that by 1970, the top 10% of landowners owned 77% of all the land in Barbados. Data on income and wealth distribution can be hard to come by, but the picture seems to be a mix of multidimensional deprivation for a significant number of people and wealth convergence at the top of the Barbadian society. Government after government, small pockets of our society are being enriched. A look at the Global Competitive Index paints the picture of a private sector that remains underdeveloped, retail-driven, and dependent on government subsidies, procurement, and concessions. The working class and the working poor remain despondent, and the middle class struggle to carry the burden of taxation. Therefore, I find it interesting that Barbadians are willing to engage in discussions of US and UK Black Lives Matter, but this is almost farcical unless we face up to our own issues of inequality and tackle the soul of the country that was supposed to be laid bare at independence by Barrow. What I have just outlined are some of the challenges that will be worsened by COVID. Challenges that are the crux of the development of Barbados as we try to build a more equal society. Broadly, there have been 3 components in Barbados, the Barbados Toolkit, to respond to these sort of socioeconomic challenges. They have included structural adjustment, privatization, and engagement of foreign capital, either by a stimulation of tourism and high-end real estate, or by borrowing from the international market. There is usually a bitter political debate about going to the IMF after reserves are run down, followed by a denial about going to the IMF. Then the government goes to the IMF. The reserves are built up again when coupled with some sort of global economic upswing for the government of the day to ride. COVID has, however, shattered the cozy consensus of the political class on how to respond to the current challenges that Barbados faces. This time is different, and the usual levers we would pull to respond to a crisis are not available. Barbados is already in a structural adjustment program with the IMF and is straitjacketed with what some commentators have assessed an ambitious deficit reduction target in this COVID environment when other countries are borrowing to spend. Tourism has been devastated and people's livelihoods shattered by job loss. And there is little appetite for privatization when potential buyers are also pressed for resources. Therefore, we have to get creative with the solutions to the challenges we face on various fronts and be willing to just try something different, something new. Surely, the response and the vision for the development of Barbados in the context of COVID cannot simply be survival, muddling through, and half measures of a move towards republicanism to renew the Barbadian spirit, especially if that attempt at constitutional and political renewal is unaccompanied by the changes such as term limits for prime ministers, ministerial codes of conduct, freedom of information act, integrity laws, campaign finance laws, anti-corruption laws, and the lot. So, therefore, the context of independence of Barrow and the context of COVID for us are different. The parallels, however, may be instructive. A Barbados challenge to change economically and politically and to acquire a new or renewed sense of purpose. If we consider that one of the main roles of government is to provide high-quality education, simply tearing up the common entrance exam cannot be the core of a vision or attempt to further Barrow's original vision to democratize education and eliminate inequalities based on fees. Removing the common entrance exam does not address the inequality of wealth distribution we have in this country. There's no denying that education can be a way to help persons build wealth and have better life opportunities for themselves and their families. My biggest fear is that the abolition of the common entrance exam, if not handled or done carefully, could be a missed opportunity for addressing other social problems at the heart of which is the need to address inequality and provide for a new generation of economically enfranchised Barbadians. The matter of development of education becomes more acute when we conclude that the biggest reform of education, EduTech, to introduce technology into Barbadian schools, appeared to have stalled, as there was no successive building on the premise beyond having computers in schools, which COVID has revealed obviously never fully manifested in a sustainable way. I believe that every school in Barbados does not have to offer the same educational program. We can introduce a range of schools. That would mean keeping some grammar schools with a modified common entrance exam to cover other subjects in arts, sciences, and languages to address transfer to those schools, and introduce international baccalaureate schools and academies of excellence in certain areas that we deem as priority areas for our national development. The idea overall is to give power to parents to decide what type of school their children should go to, and also to prepare children for jobs beyond the traditional professions. Providing free education by Barrow was monumental for Barbados, but it was a one-size-fits-all. Now, if we're able to provide options besides the common interest and different types of public schools, not following the same program, that could be the next step. In contrast, there are spaces where the government should be less involved or more dynamic with its role, so it can focus on priority areas such as education. The question of the role or purpose of government in business is therefore one we have to answer, not necessarily as Barrow did, but in a way that works for us now. Barrow stated, "We intend to put an end to the practice where publicly owned enterprises producing non-strategic goods and services are permitted to operate at a substantial loss with little likelihood of ever making a profit. I propose that government should function as business and social enterprise. It is without a doubt that controlling the public purse is a difficult job, and governments of all shades should concentrate on the provision of key services such as education and health for the ongoing development of Barbados, and make it easy for people to get on with the business of business and in creating jobs. I think that government needs to get out of its own way, or rather, mercurial politicians need to get out of the way so that parts of government can function and make money and do exactly that. This is instead of governments and its machinery being used for artificial short-term ends by politicians handing out jobs or piecemeal short-term projects. For example, should governments be engaged in Boys on the Blocks program, some of which are used to placate that group until the next handout? Or should government provide real opportunities for young people, recognizing that Boys on the Block and the university student are experiencing the same angst about opportunities and their place in the world and the future, but university creates opportunities for one set of young people while we give handouts to another set of young people. The parts of government and statutory corporations with money-making potential should open themselves up as a space for entrepreneurship and for innovation, for opportunities for more technical areas for persons to engage in. For example, arrangements to contract out public services to various competitors, or allowing the use of government-owned facilities to provide for the creative industry to make exportable goods such as movies and TV shows and entertainment shows. There is no point in having state-of-the-art government facilities such as the CBC TV studios, which are not fully used but are financed by taxpayers' money without capitalizing on their own money-making ability. Government can also use its procurement and purchasing power to drive innovation in the local market with a view to encourage export of products or services. Government can also provide the framework to support scientists and tech entrepreneurs. How can we do this? One way to do this would be to create centers of excellence and provide the appropriate fiscal incentives to attract Barbadian talent back to Barbados and for Bajan talent to stay in Barbados. And we can do this by rationalizing existing government agencies. We could start with something very practical, such as reorganizing the unit for returning nationals in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Reorganize in some functions of other development agencies, such as the Barbados Industrial Development Corporation and Invest Barbados, can be rationalized as a new Barbados Center for Innovation. This is what I mean when I say think and act as government as business and social enterprise. It is about finding new ways to open up new spaces for jobs and for development and opportunities for our young people. A new role for the center would be to actively attract and facilitate young Barbadians living overseas and even international talent to move to Barbados to live and set up businesses and work. The center can continue to administer the current tax breaks similar to what the Unit for Returning Nationals does, in addition to any new tax breaks for young returning Barbadians or international talent that wishes to partner, whether through financing, technology transfers, or knowledge sharing with small businesses or entrepreneurs already in Barbados. The center would not only be linked to Barbados' embassies and consulates, as is the Unit for Returning Nationals, but the center would ensure that embassies and consulates are active hubs for facilitating the export of Barbadian products and services. My point is simple. Until we come to a new consensus on the role and the purpose of government, we will continue to have fake debates and justifications about the size of government and miss tackling what the priorities of government should be, whether that be the creation of global excellence in education or basically whatever we decide. And this is where leadership is key, and Barrow can be instructive to us here. Barrow, in his time, had to be brutally blunt about the failing industry of sugar and the need for a new industry. The only way to address it was head-on. Barrow pioneered tourism. We are at a juncture where the same directness has to be taken with the tourism sector. Now, what I will do is provide a brief history on tourism and the services sector in Barbados to re-emphasize my earlier point that we can situate Barrow within the stages of development of Barbados. Barrow's pragmatic economic approach to diversify the economy from sugar, accounting, I believe, at that time for about 80% of exports in the 1960s, to promote tourism and light manufacturing. It was more about modernization than revolutionizing the social economic setup of Barbados regarding white ownership and control of the sugar industry and land at that time. So in 1969, Barrow initiated Operation Beehive, launching the Barbados Industrial Development Corporation, which attracted light industries and hotels to Barbados. Tom Adams continued Barrow's approach, focusing during his tenure on attracting high-tech multinational corporations such as Intel. Adams promoted the development of international business sector situated in Barbados as a competitive tax jurisdiction. Owen Arthur was to add to tourism the dimension of foreign direct investment in high-end real estate, which was continued by Thompson and Stewart. Therefore, Barbados essentially has had the same service sector-based economic model that Barrow initiated to pay the bills, albeit with added dimensions by successive leaderships. Arguably, have we had a new vision since Barrow? Has an entire country been dining out on the legacy of one man? What can we try that is different? Two things come to mind. One of these, a remote work visa, has already been implemented by the government after a public proposal by a private citizen, Peter Lawrence Thompson, reached the desk of the relevant authorities. He deserves to be commended for willingly, openly, and freely sharing his idea for the benefit of Barbados. The idea being to shift from short-term tourism to long-term remote worker or the digital nomad. This is the sort of thinking that we need as we develop our tourism product. The other idea is a service zone. And when I talk about a service zone, I am not talking about a repeat of early pre- and post-independence industrialization by invitation and exclusive economic zones, which, like tourism, can contribute significantly to economic growth, but do not contribute to economic development because there is no technological transfer, or at least there is little technological transfer and innovation. The service zone would be a physical space that can be a center or a hub for finance, banking, tech, shipping, and arbitration. This is similar to what has been done in Dubai with the Dubai International Financial Center as a financial free zone, which has become a financial hub for the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia, or in Shanghai as the free trade zone and arbitration center. What does it require to set up a service zone? It requires its own set of laws to govern the behavior of people, businesses in and outside the zone, and importantly, ways to address disputes when laws are broken. If my law and legal system students are listening, I am sure discussions on the role of law sound all too familiar. What else is required? Properly designed incentive packages for mature business and for startups. One size does not fit all. This should not be about simply giving tax breaks. The development of large-scale projects must be tied to the development of social capital in Barbados. It is not about necessarily building new edifices of concrete and reducing our already limited green spaces when existing areas could be revitalized and reimagined for such a zone. A few other specifics about the zone as I see it. In addition to the zone having the rules to govern its existence, it will require regulatory authorities, commercial courts, and international arbitration bodies. Provision should be made to allow qualified international professionals to work in the service zone. That way, we get to liberalize our professional services market and attract new businesses and talent without necessarily compromising the local market or legal system. Further, the service zone could be a place to test new financial products. For example, provide a space where cryptocurrencies can be traded and be used to buy goods and services. It could be a zone built also on blockchain technology and to create new forms of electronic contracts. What could also be an interesting development is not merely the zone, but the regulatory framework that governs the zone. Along with English law and New York law, the service zone could allow, for example, provisions for, say, arbitration center from Shanghai as a choice of arbitration for companies in the zone. The point is that Barbados could possibly be a hub for Latin American and Caribbean arbitration as it relates to Chinese investment. China is predicted by 2050 to be the world's economic leader. We cannot wait until 2050 to make decisions about how to capitalize on our relationship with China. These kinds of activities and discussions must start now. The service zone also has the potential to be the next thing in the service sector by providing jobs for traditional areas and also jobs for new areas, some of which we may not even have imagined as yet. Madam Chair, I've tried to set out some things we can do and some of the steps we can take towards continuing the development of Barbados. What I tried to show is that we need to focus exactly on the role of government, what it should be, continuing and enhancing foundational priorities such as education by putting more choice into the system, and by government getting out of the way and creating the framework for wealth creation and new service industries to pay for the very foundational priorities of the country. Governments should focus on the priorities and do them well, because in trying to do everything, governments may end up under-delivering on these priorities. At the core, what I believe in is greater economic enfranchisement for all Barbadians, which ultimately is a continuation of Barrow's quest for social justice. Everyone will not agree with everything that I've said, if anything I've said at all. This is part of public engagement. What everyone is to realize is not once did I suggest any new commissions or new organizations that were not from existing organizations. Not once did I suggest any reports, any councils, or any boards. As Barrow cautioned, what happens in the Caribbean is that when you have a good idea, either the British or the American commercial interests kill the idea, or the West Indian governments appoint committee after committee, or the civil servants are the main beneficiaries of these well-thought ideas and spend 15 to 20 years too much talking, too much writing, and that kind of thing. End quote. Change, even of the Barbados type, quiet and resolute, requires something that committees and reports do not create or do not capture. Requires leadership, courage, and hard work, which were the qualities that marked Barrow from all the other leaders. His brazen, we can do attitude is what is required in these times. I want to end on a personal note. The free education that Barrow instituted is one of the reasons I am here. I grew up poor by every and any measure. My guiding philosophy in whatever space I find myself in is to attempt to remove deprivation in all its forms, especially mental deprivation, and to promote and represent excellence. Some days and in some ways, we all fall short of the glory, but that should never deter the trying. Inequality must be removed from Barbadian society and replaced with a fairer, kinder, meritocratic society where talent, hard work, and merit are rewarded, and no one asks you, where are you from, as a way to determine whether you have value or not to national debate, public life, or to be provided with opportunities for your success and the success of your family. If there's one part of Barrow's legacy we can hold to, it is this quest for social justice. I'm not going to pretend that any of the answers to what Barbados faces are easy, but hopefully tonight we've added to the ongoing discussion about the development of Barbados. The work ahead of us as a country will be hard, and I know it feels dark now, but we must believe that we will all walk in the sun again. We must believe that as a country and as individuals, our best days are ahead of us with some imagination and hard work. We must believe that Barbados will be that shining city on the hill, that new Jerusalem for all her people. I thank you, good night, and God bless.
Thank you for that very informative and very captivating lecture. We really would have learned quite a bit and had a lot of thought to process from your lecture. It was definitely eye-opening. At this point, we are going to move on to the award portion of this evening's proceedings. We will be presenting our awardees digitally because due to COVID, unfortunately, they were unable to be present with us today. However, we hope that all of the awardees receive our heartfelt congratulations on behalf of the executive, the general council, and the members of the Democratic Labour Party. Our first awardee receiving the Pride of Barbados Award, which will be presented for outstanding contributions to community development and culture, goes to Ms. Samia Cumberbatch. Born on the 26th of June, 1998, Samia Cumberbatch is a 22-year-old Muslim Barbadian woman, born and raised as a young lady with a passion for youth development and service. The past Harrison College student now attends the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, where she is pursuing her Bachelor's of Science in Meteorology and Computer Science. Thereafter, she endeavors to become a hydrologist, a field in which she can contribute to the environment, another thing she holds dear. Samia currently resides with her mother, an attorney at law, her father, a telephone technician, and her younger brother. Growing up in an Islamic household, it was instilled in her to give as long as she has. This teaching manifests in numerous charitable and advocacy-related activities Samia is a part of. The Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme Gold Awardee loves swimming, baking, reading, and being bossy. She's 4'11", and as such, she has a slight Napoleon complex. Samia has served on the executives of the Barbados Youth Development Council, the Barbados Association of Muslim Ladies, and Pink Parliament, to name a few. Most recently, she co-created an exhibition at the Barbados Museum and Historic Society, Insurgents, Redefining Rebellion. And she currently serves as a director for the newly formed Optimist Club of UE. Last October, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Samia and her best friend conceptualized a business called O Sugar, which specializes in the provision of sweet treats and desserts that aren't widely offered in Barbados. An integral aspect of her business is its commitment to charity. As such, every month, Old Sugar selects a charity or good cause to contribute to, in kind, in monetary, or in time. Old Sugar has made contributions so far to the BAEH, the BCS breast screening program, and various Optimus clubs across Barbados. Next month, Old Sugar will be contributing to the Deaf Heart Project. Samuel receives a Pride of Barbados Award for her contribution to the Barbados Association of Muslim Ladies and her work in youth development. Our second Pride of Barbados awardee is Mr. Ian Iweb Webster. Ian Webster is a name synonymous with musical excellence, a rising star in Barbados. Ian has sought to redefine and modernize calypso. Singing since the age of 7, he is an award-winning singer and songwriter, and a versatile artist who is making his mark musically. Ian aptly wears the titles of performer, writer, composer, pianist, vocalist, and educator. As a music professional, Ian received his formal training at the University of the Southern Caribbean, Trinidad, where he studied classical voice and graduated cum laude in 2009 with a Bachelor of Arts degree with a major in theology and a minor in music. He also holds certifications from the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music in several disciplines: trumpet, voice, and music theory. He holds a postgraduate diploma in music education from Erdiston's Teacher Training College, and most recently, he added a master's in advertising and marketing to his list of qualifications. One half of the award-winning songwriting duo Water Street Boys, he has won many awards, including in 2000, second place in the Richard Stout Teen Talent Show as the lead singer in the a cappella group Infinity. The winner of the Pickety Crop title in 2013, 2014, and 2017, and songwriter of the Cropover Festival as a part of Water Street Boys in 2019. He was also one of the producers on the We Got This Caribbean collaborations with Water Street Boys. Ian Iweb Webster is being awarded the Pride of Barbados Award for his outstanding contribution to culture and to the creative industry. Our next two awardees will be receiving the Mirror Image Award, and this will be presented for outstanding national service. Our first awardee is Dr. Esther Byers-Suku Carter. She is known by many as a Barbadian politician and former cabinet minister. Born in Barbados on September 10, 1968, she attended St. Luke's Primary School, then Queen's College, where she was awarded a Barbados government exhibition in 1987. She continued her education at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, attaining her MBBS in 1993, qualifying her to be a medical doctor. After establishing the Ellerton Medical Center in 1997, her desire to provide health care to the less fortunate took her to Malawi, where she worked as a short-term medical missionary with Uplift International in 2001. She also worked in Uganda in 2005. Dr. Byers-Suku Carter was elected as a member of parliament for the St. George North constituency in January 2008 in the general election. She is a former Cub Scout and youth group leader, a Sunday school and Bible teacher, a lecturer in pharmacology at the Barbados Community College, and a member of the American Academy of Family Physicians. She is also a member of the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners, where she has served as the General Secretary and Vice President. Dr. Esther Bayer-Suku Carter is being awarded the Mirror Image Award for her hard work in the COVID-19 pandemic on the front line. Our next awardee is Mr. Ibrahim Numer. Ibrahim Numer arrived in Barbados on the 27th of November, 1970. Originally from Syria, he opened a small mobile business, which he ran for his first 5 years in Barbados. Subsequently, he opened his first store in Speightstown at a property he rented from Mr. Elmer Jordan. His business grew, and he moved to Swan Street in 1981, and later to Broad Street, where he currently employs 24 staff members, 3 of whom have been employed with his business from 1981. He met the late Errol Barrow in the 1970s and was impressed with his policies for developing Barbados. He often joined Mr. Barrow and many other DLP members and leaders in their discussions about the further development of Barbados. Mr. Numer wishes that all Barbadians take steps to protect themselves from COVID-19 and that the country has a speedy recovery from the challenges that the pandemic has posed. Today, Mr. Ibrahim Numer is being awarded the Mirror Image Award for his philanthropic work in the community for the last 25 years. That brings our award ceremony to an end, and it also brings our program for this evening to an end. I would like to thank everyone who was involved in today's proceedings. I'd like to thank Dr. Ronnie Yearwood for that amazing lecture. I'm sure that we all learned a lot. And if we are being reminded of things, we would have been able to think on the ways that it would have affected us as Barbadians and really gain a new appreciation for our culture and what has been done in the past and how it really has impacted our lives currently. I'd like to thank Ms. Verla de Pisa, the president of the Democratic Labour Party, for her participation and contribution to today's celebration. Ms. Reverend Dale Currency, who was the Reverend who prayed and opened our ceremonies, because we always want to start with a word of prayer, and we are grateful for his contribution. Mr. Corey Cox for his contribution today, as well as Ms. Lashana Griffith. We would have enjoyed her spoken word, and we are grateful for her participation as well. The Barrow Activities Committee, they put in incredible work. It was a lot of work to put this together and ensure that this was a successful event, especially in light of having to adjust the program because of the COVID-19 protocols. And they did an amazing job, and we want to thank them for their hard work, as well as the members of the Democratic Labour Party and all others who would have contributed to today's proceedings and to the awards that we would have presented. We also want to thank all of the viewers at home who have tuned in. You were a huge part of making this successful, and we hope that you had an amazing time. We hope that you learned a lot, and we hope that you were able to appreciate what we were able to deliver to you and have a new appreciation for Errol Barrow Day and what that symbolizes for us as Barbadians. And anyone that I may have forgotten, because a lot of people really put in a lot of work to make sure that this event came off as planned, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of the Executive, the General Council, and all of the members of the Democratic Labour Party. We are grateful for your contribution, and we hope that you have an amazing night. Happy Errol Barrow Day to everyone, and stay safe during this COVID-19 pandemic. God bless.